Good evening, I'm Stephanie Mills. Thanks for joining us. Tonight on a special edition of Ask the Specialist, we're joined by experts talking about substance abuse on CMU Public Television. On tonight's show, we're talking about substance abuse in the Central Michigan region. Now, I'm joined today by Detective Lieutenant Mark Yerby, who is the North Team Leader for Bayonet and the 3rd District Meth Coordinator. Also here tonight is Pam Milheisler, the Prevention Coordinator with 1016 Recovery Network. Also here tonight, Paul Gravlin, who works with the Claire Gladwin Recovery Court. Before we begin, why don't each of you kind of introduce yourselves and tell us a little bit about what you do. We'll start with you, Mark.
Okay. Again, my name is Lieutenant Mark Yerby. I work for the Michigan State Police. I'm a team leader for the North Team for Bayonet, which covers Isabella, Clare, and Gladwin counties. And my job duties are to run a crew of 5, and we focus on narcotic investigations in this part of Michigan.
Pam?
Yes, I work for 1016 Recovery Network, and I'm the prevention person. I go into schools and teach kids about drugs and alcohol, and also work in the community. We have various community events, things like that.
Okay. And Paul?
And I'm the coordinator for the Clare and Gladwin County Recovery Courts, which handles both misdemeanor and felony cases in both alcohol and in drug cases.
Okay, awesome. Well, thank you all three for being here and helping raise awareness about this issue. Now, we're going to start with, right now, talking about what are the current drug trends in Central Michigan?
What we're seeing in this area is we're seeing the opiates being really used a lot. We're starting to see heroin coming back in this area. We're starting to see a 20% increase in methamphetamine being used and manufactured in this area. Of course, we're still seeing the use of marijuana as well as cocaine and the crack cocaine in this area. But the opiates are definitely making a strong comeback. And because the college town being at Mount Pleasant is, we're starting to see some of these synthetic narcotics being utilized.
Okay, all right. How do the drug trends here compare to, say, the rest of the state? Is it higher? Is it lower?
When it comes to like methamphetamine, we're a little bit lower than the southwestern part of Michigan. But when it comes to like the use of heroin and other narcotics, cocaine, we're about the same. General trained of all of Michigan in this area. Of course, the bigger towns like your Saginaw, your Flint, and Detroit, they see a larger amounts of crack cocaine being utilized, but we don't see that here.
Okay, all right. Back to methamphetamine, how big of a problem is meth in some of our communities?
Well, from my perspective, just one meth lab is a problem, okay? But what we have seen in 2013 was a 20% increase in the use and manufacture of methamphetamine. And what happened was the one pot, which came along, was changed on how people manufacture methamphetamine. And with the one pot, you can make it inside with the one pot, you can put it in a car, you can put it in a book bag. So people are now manufacturing methamphetamine from point A and point B. They're not just making it in one house. They're able to take that to different locations, to different houses, out in the woods, parking lots, garages, anywhere, and make this methamphetamine, which makes it very dangerous for the common person.
Why is meth such a problem, and what makes it so addicting?
It's so addicting because it affects the type of the brain where it makes it addicting to the person who takes it. They tell us that we've been taught that even a person takes it for the first time, one time, they can become addicted to it over the first time.
Just one time?
Just one time.
That's all it takes?
Yeah.
Okay.
It actually starts rewiring the brain right away to wanting more of that drug.
Okay, interesting. How do we recognize meth dump sites, and where's a common place people find them?
Well, we're finding lately the trend is they just in the side of the road. What you find is like a bottle with some kind of a brown or whitish substance into it, or you might find other chemicals associated with it. You might find other like some Drano bottles, okay, or some pop bottles with a tube that's been taped to it. What we see, they've been thrown on the side of the road. And it's very dangerous for a person to come and pick trash up. So what I'd like people to see is try to identify it first, look at it. Don't go near it, look at it from a distance and try to identify what it is. Because they're just dropping it off in the side of the road.
We often hear about meth labs and children. Police find a meth lab in a house, where there's children. How do we? Is it possible to recognize children that are living in a place where meth is being made?
Well, in the past, when we used to have the old labs with all the chemical equipment, some children would come to school or to the neighbor's house. They smell like a strong chemical smell, okay? Or they would be all of a sudden start losing a lot of weight. They wouldn't have. They'd be erratic sleeping habits because with methamphetamine, you're awake for a long period of time. That's what we would see with these kids.
Dangerous. Let's talk about some different kinds of drugs. There's obviously always, some new drug that is hitting the market. What are some new drugs that have you guys maybe really concerned right now?
What we started seeing is with the synthetic drugs. That's the synthetic cocaine and synthetic marijuana, and now we're seeing what we think called H-bomb, which is synthetic acid. That's what we've been seeing in mid-Michigan area, and that concerns us.
I think, Pam, you had brought up another drug that was called Molly.
Yes, and that's a mixture of two chemicals. We've seen bath salts in there, meth, and yeah, very, very dangerous.
Okay. Prescription drugs. How does prescription drug abuse compare with illegal drug use? Which is a higher risk? Is there such a thing as a higher risk?
Well, from our perspective, anytime you abuse any drug, that's a higher risk. So from us, whether it's an illegal drug or a prescription drug, if you're abusing it, you're at risk of becoming more addictive to it and doing dangerous things with those drugs.
Okay. Is prescription drug use, do you think it's going up or down?
We hope that it's going down because it's something we've been working on here in Michigan for about 3 years now, getting the word out to doctors and the public, trying to reach them that these aren't safe and 100% okay just because a doctor prescribes them. One of the things I tell kids especially is watch those drug ads on TV and look at the side effects. They're huge. So.
What can parents do to kind of keep prescription drugs away from kids? Is there anything?
Lock them up. Have a lockbox. Monitor how much you have on hand. I know sometimes when we go to get a prescription, you can get 3 months supply, but try to monitor how much you have, lock it up so nobody else can get hold of it, and dispose of anything unused or outdated.
Okay. What's the best way to, say you have some prescription drugs that you're no longer using, what's the best way to get rid of those?
Right here in Mount Pleasant at the city police station, they have a prescription drug drop box. It's open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Just take anything in, dump it in there, no questions asked. And a lot of the communities in our areas in northern Michigan do have a prescription drop box.
Okay. How do people, what overall are drug arrests in central Michigan going up or are they going down?
If you take, I recently looked at the stats, they're around just a little bit down from last year in the Mount Pleasant, Isabel County area. They're actually down at CMU on campus area, so we're seeing a little bit of a downward trend a little bit. We're still working very, very hard with all the chiefs and Michigan State Police to keep this trend continuing to go down.
Sure. What do you think is behind that trend?
It could be a lot of things. Maybe the community being more educated in the harmful effects of drugs. I think people giving up information, tips and information on potential problems dealing with drugs, dealing with police departments. And I think overall, this community works real well together with police departments to solve this problem we have in this part of Michigan. I
want to go back to meth labs. It seems like you might not hear anything about meth labs for a couple of weeks or a month, and then all of a sudden you have a whole bunch of meth labs that are popping up. What's the reason behind that?
Usually happens, you have a person that will come into the community and start making methamphetamine, and then he'll show 3 or 4 new friends he has. Well, those 3 or 4 friends will then start making it themselves. So eventually, when there gets one arrest, eventually they then will all fall behind them during those arrests.
Okay. All right. Okay. Let's talk about what kind of drugs are making their way into schools. What are we seeing nowadays?
The biggest thing is that prescription drug abuse. It's easily accessible. People have them in their homes, easy to get. Of course, alcohol is always in there as well as marijuana. But right now, the big thing is the prescription drugs.
And that's what you're saying again, just lock them up.
Yep.
And it doesn't need to be locked up just at home, too. Sometimes we forget that grandparents, other relatives, when they go to visit them, oftentimes they come up. There's an awful lot of sharing of drugs, and oftentimes someone would suggest, we've had a couple of cases where somebody said, well, I've got a little pain, and somebody said, oh, here, take one of my prescription drugs. And so we see a lot of that sharing back and forth as well.
Okay. All right. What can I do to keep my child drug-free?
One of the biggest things I see is be a part of your child's life. Know who their friends are. Keep that line of communication open and wide open. Don't think you're going to start communicating when they're 17 years old. It needs to start when they're younger. Be aware if they're going to a friend's house. Know if a parent's going to be there, another adult. Help your kid have goals, be a part of sports, be a part of the community. Have family type rituals like the evening meal together, okay, where you talk with them. Okay? Even going to church together, that is something, it's another community. Things like that really help in keeping kids.
Okay. What signs can I look for that might show that my child is into drugs? What are some telltale signs?
Sleeping late, not sleeping, eating differently, either losing large amounts of weight or putting on more weight, falling grades, changing their interests. Say they were in basketball and suddenly they don't want to do that anymore. That's a sign. Changing friends, discipline problems at school. All of those things can tell you that something's going on. Also, parents have that gut instinct that they just think something's not right.
Okay. What can parents do if they find out their child or someone else's child is using drugs?
Definitely talk to that child. Make sure that you've already discussed substance abuse in the past with them and the way you feel about it, and the consequences that are going to happen if they choose to take drugs or drink alcohol. Have those consequences. They know something's going to happen.
Are schools doing, do you think schools are doing enough, teaching about drug prevention? Is there something there that could help in prevention and keeping kids off drugs?
Yeah, they're doing a good job, and they're also allowing us to come in to talk about it. It is kind of our specialty.
Okay.
The kids have a lot of really good questions about it.
Okay. And how soon does it start?
I have started as young as elementary school, but what we talk about there is like prescription medications, cough syrups. Sometimes things can look like candy, but they're not, and only adults should touch medicine.
Sure.
So it's age appropriate.
Sure. Okay. All right. Paul, why don't you tell us a little bit about the Claire Gladwin Recovery Court?
Okay. Well, several years ago, the state decided that we needed to get involved in what are called treatment courts. Okay. And so they looked at drug, they looked at alcohol or sobriety, they looked at mental health, they looked at veterans, and they've set up these courts. And what happened was that we were starting to get into a revolving door. The police would arrest somebody, we'd bring them to court, we'd put them in jail, they'd get released, the police would arrest them, we'd bring them to court, we'd put them in jail, but nobody was attacking the root, the alcoholism or the addictions. And so they created these specialty courts. In Clare and Gladwin counties, they decided that there weren't enough participants for just drugs, or they're just enough for sobriety, so we combined the two and called a recovery court. And so we deal with cases that are both misdemeanor and felony cases, trying to have a treatment program. We have a regiment that they have to follow. And I explained to the people that it's not an easy regiment. They have to come to our court every other week before the judge. On the off weeks, they see a probation officer. So they're seen by somebody at least once every other week, and sometimes more often than that. In alcohol cases, they're alcohol tested daily with random drug tests. We find that there's a lot of crossover. When somebody's taken away from one, they go to the other. In drug cases, we do random drug tests, and we sometimes test for alcohol as well. They have to attend a 12-step, such as an AA meeting. They have to go to treatment. 1016 is one of the people that works with us. We also have some individual private counselors that work with us as well. The program's designed to be 18 to 24 months. There are 4 phases that people go through, and they have to accomplish a certain amount of sobriety in each of those phases in order to move on. We've been in business now for about 1.5 years, and we're about to see our first graduates in the next 3 to 4 months. And so we're really pleased with the progress. We've unfortunately had a couple of people that haven't been able to do so well. And one of the hardest things that we've had to do is working with the courts and with the probation staff is to talk about the fact that these people are going to stumble. There's no on-off switch. People that have tried to quit smoking know how difficult that is. Well, to come off of an alcohol or a drug addiction is equally as hard, if not more. And so people are going to have mishaps along the way. Mm-hmm. And so we try to review each case on an individual basis and take a look at the situation. We've had a couple of people, as I said, that kind of failed out of the program. It couldn't do it. But we've had, so far, excellent success. None of our people who are currently in the program and have committed any new offenses. And so that's real pleasing to us, and that's our goal, is to keep these people, number one, away from drugs and alcohol, and number two, keep them away from the legal system. How
do alcohol arrests compare with like prescription drugs or illegal drug arrests? Is that up? Is that down? Are you still? You know?
Yeah, I don't know the exact statistics. In our court, the majority of our cases are alcohol related.
Okay.
We also take a look at other offenses. I have a young man right now in the program that's there for embezzlement. Well, that's his charge, but he was embezzling to pay for his drugs. Mm-hmm. We have some breaking and entering, larceny from a building, because they were stealing drugs or stealing something in order to buy drugs. And so we look at a whole spectrum and say, what is the offense? And if it's not a drug or an alcohol direct related offense, does it have an element there? Mm-hmm. And is that the cause? The same thing we look at with some of the domestic violence situations or other situations where alcohol, people tell me, when I drink, I'm a different person. And so, what is the background of that person and how do we help them in the court?
Gotcha, okay. What's the cost per person in the drug court versus like prison time?
Well, we have a fee that we charge each of the people. We charge them $500 to be in the program. That's over and above their other costs. The real savings comes from the fact that they're not in jail, and the jail doesn't have to spend time, doesn't have to pay medical bills, doesn't have to pay other things over there. If we can keep them out of jail, and that's our goal, then we save money rather than making money. We're not in the making money business, we're in the saving people business. Those people also have to pay for their own drug tests and other expenses along the way. And many of them, particularly with the alcohol related, because we're talking about driving under the influence, by the time they get to their second, the state can take their license for up to 2 years. When they get to an OWI 3, the state can take their license for up to 5 years. And so that's an incentive for them not to do those types of things, as well as possible jail and or prison sentences. So the whole idea is to save money, keep them out of the system, and it saves money to the community and also saves money to the system.
Sure, okay. How many How many number of clients do you have a day? What's your typical count?
Right now, we have 20 people in the program. We have 10 in Gladwin County and 10 in Clare County. And that's really been based upon the staff that we have. We work with the felony cases with the Department of Corrections, and their parole and probation agents are the ones that handle those cases, aside from their regular caseload. And so we kind of have to tailor to see how many cases can they handle on their caseload versus how many people have we got coming in. Because we're just now getting our first graduates, we haven't had anybody cycle through the whole program. So within the next 3 or 4 months, we're going to have some additional slots. We've decided that probably 20 to 25 is our caseload for Clare and Gladwin counties.
Okay. Let's talk about treatment. What are some ways that people can get treatment? Where can they go? Where can they turn if they're looking for help?
I mainly know about 1016 because that's where I work. There are other programs also in the area, but with 1016 we have offices.
1016 is located here in Mount Pleasant, correct?
We have one office here along with a detox facility here in Mount Pleasant.
Okay.
We have a residential house in Midland.
Okay.
And outpatient offices in Clare, Gladwin, Big Rapids, Mount Pleasant, and Midland.
Okay. And what type of treatment do you offer?
I'm sorry, what do you mean by the treatment?
If people need help, they can just come there and you guys can kind of set them up with a program?
Yes, and what they really need.
Okay.
Some people, a group will do just fine. Some people may need the detox facility. Some people, it might be their first time, and quite often I get sent from schools. I get kids that have got caught with pot at school, and a little education will do them just fine.
Okay.
There are also some inpatient types of programs, and we work through what's called NMSAS, Northern Michigan Substance Abuse Agency, and they help us then to locate facilities in northern Michigan primarily that will do short-term and or long-term residential type programs. 1016 has a residential program that's about 28 days. Some people need more than that. I had people in 3-month programs. I had somebody in a 14-month program. And so those programs are available to us as well.
Okay, all right. Prevention. What can we do to keep young people from getting involved in tobacco, in alcohol, and in other addictive substances?
Okay. One of the things that I see with kids that end up coming to my office with a charge of some kind is that they don't have a goal. If you ask them, what are you going to do if or when you graduate, they'll say, I don't know. Having that goal really helps. They have something to work for. Being a part of sports or 4-H or anything like that where, again, they have a goal that they want to achieve something through, that's a big thing. Okay. With tobacco, I do the tobacco checks here in Mount Pleasant, and I will take a youth out, somebody that's under 18, and we will go and see if a store will sell to them. Last year, I'm very happy to say 100% no sale here in Mount Pleasant. That's not always the case, but definitely the cigarettes are something that's easily accessible as well, something that kids would generally start with.
Sure.
Education, I think, is the big part. And of course, when you're dealing with kids, it's never going to happen to them. And so, you can show them those articles, and you can show them the information, but it's never going to happen to them. And so, their invincibility. But we continue to educate, and we continue to educate parents and the community about the dangers and what happens when you get involved. I know that Mark has been involved in a symposium that we had, and we had some pictures of things, and pictures of people that are on meth and what happens to you physically, not only just internally, but also externally, and you see the damage that can be done there. And people don't want to see that. I mean, it's pretty horrific when you look at those types of pictures. And so we just continue to try and continue to let them know what happens to you, both physically and, as we talked earlier, just the brain, what it does to the brain. And oftentimes that doesn't appear until much later in life. And that's a scary thing.
This is an ongoing education for the parents because things are changing. Like for a while there, we only had, like cocaine, marijuana, or heroin, and now we have these synthetic narcotics that have now came into our area. So parents have to keep educating themselves, and there's tons of places to go to on the internet to access information, as well as these symposiums, these community events that we put out to educate parents and children about all these dangers of these drugs and these new drugs that are coming to our area.
Sure,
Yeah,
sure.
even some of the older drugs, like marijuana, it's so different now compared to back in the 60s and 70s.
Yeah.
It's like a totally different drug.
Is it because it's just, are these drugs just easier to make than they were back then? I mean, is that it? Like they're just, they seem to be easier to make, and you can go online and just look something up real quick. And
With the marijuana, the THC level years past was really low, but now it's much higher because of the different seeds that they have changed and have altered over time.
sure.
And that's the scary part of it, is that the kids take things that they have no idea what it is. As Mark says, the marijuana has changed dramatically. The synthetics, you never know what you're going to get. It changes from pack to pack, and you never know exactly what you're going to get. I always have a story that I used to tell. I had a young man on probation years ago that I got called to the school that they found a pill on him. And I took him back and I said, "Steve, do you understand what would have happened to you if you'd have taken this pill?" And he said, "No, what?" I said, "You'd have dried up your sinuses." He was willing to pay money for an antihistamine. But the sad part is he was willing to take it and not have any idea what that is.
That's
And that's the
scary.
same thing we find with this stuff.
Sure.
They have no idea what they're doing and what they're taking. And that's a danger. It's a real danger.
That's scary.
Yeah.
It is, yeah. And even Adderall, huge on college campuses, to the point it's called the study drug. You know, that's not helping us.
Right. Well, before we close up tonight, I do want to mention we do have a symposium coming up here in Isabella County. The second annual Isabella County Drug Symposium that's coming up Wednesday, March 26th. Now this is, you know, where you can come and get some more information and become more aware. It's from 5:30 to 9 o'clock. It'll be at the Commission on Aging in Isabella County. That's at 2200 South Lincoln Road, and that is right here in Mount Pleasant. So I want to thank each of you for being here tonight. I think we did a really good job bringing awareness to this issue. From all of us here at Ask the Specialists, have a great night.